Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on what time of the day you're watching this. I'm going to read you the first 5 pages from my book, Deity Creation. I hope you enjoy it. Part 1, Genesis of Creation. Chapter 1. Extract from Progress Report 30.153, Section 15, Deity Creation. As has been referenced in prior reports, the enthusiasm for belief in a divine power remains steadfast. This unique factor was the catalyst for the recommendation in Progress Report 23.134 that an experiment be instigated to create a single deity to replace the multiplicity of deities that were developing. The results from that attempt, despite the investment of significant resources, has been far from impressive, notwithstanding initial encouraging results. The single deity has only been accepted by a small percentage of the population, with the majority unwilling to change their beliefs. Most extraordinary is the fact that those who have accepted the single deity are the subject of widespread religious intolerance. The experiment is at a point where it requires further resources to allow it the chance of achieving its objective, otherwise the experiment will stagnate and ultimately fail. On balance, the objective of creating a single deity on Earth remains a worthwhile pursuit in the context of the wider plan, so it is recommended that a team be set up to re-energise the project. The team will need members who have a proven history of adaptability, a wide range of skills, and the attributes of creativity and ingenuity. The team will have to be led by an individual with actual experience in the area. Our suggestion for team leader is Professor Yila, Head of Theology Department of the Arts University in the Central Capital on the UC Prime. Yila was not happy. He was commuting to work on a Monday morning, squashed into a crowded and stuffed under tram with a couple of hundred other glum-looking middle-aged commuters. The windows were wet with condensation due to the air conditioning malfunctioning again. He placed his hand on the collar of his shirt and pulled it away from his neck to allow some air to circulate to his chest, which was damp with sweat. He was still suffering the after effects from his going-away party at the university, which didn't help with his perspiration. He had at least had the sense to have it on a Saturday night, but his legendary inability to consume even a moderate quantity of alcohol had doomed him to a ferocious 48-hour hangover that kicked in early on the Sunday morning and was only now beginning to dissipate. If asked how he was feeling by any of his passengers, which would have been unprecedented, he would have replied, barely tolerable. However, the main reason for his unhappiness was where the undertram was taking him and why. He sighed loudly, a common occurrence during the 3 days since he received the email of doom, as he referred to it. He had been comparing the religious belief on a recently discovered planet with those he had already researched, when his computer had alerted him to an incoming email. He had opened it and was horrified when he saw its contents. It was a letter informing him that he had been reassigned. He was to be transferred to the Sub-Department for Administrative Affairs within the Department of Labour, with only 3 days allowed for a handover. He had sat there rereading the letter, hoping that it had been a mistake or a practical joke. When he realised that it wasn't, he had tried and failed to think of any justification for him being transferred to a role not relevant to his skill set. Yile had never left the task uncompleted. The idea was alien to him, so he wasn't going to depart from his theology department without a fight. He had immediately contacted the dean of the university and reminded the dean that for 10 years he had devoted his life to the formation of the Department of Theology. Every obstacle he had encountered, and there were many, had been successfully overcome. It would be ludicrous to transfer him just as the department was beginning to gain acceptance within the academic community. He had argued that it was only he who would have the commitment to secure its long-term future. The dean had agreed and suggested that Yila should put in a written request that the transfer be reviewed. His staff member and students sent supporting emails. There were only 5. He only had 1 assistant and 4 students. As well as forwarding Yila's letter of protest, the dean had made representations on his behalf. She had assured Yila that she would get it resolved, so he was devastated when the answer came back that there would be no change. A despondent Yila had spent his last 3 days in the theology department handing over his work in progress. He was bemused that his replacement was coming from the accounting and finance department. Perhaps the love of money and the love of deity were one and the same. Neither he nor his replacement were sure about that. He sighed again when the intercom blared. Parkland Station next stop. Either the automatic announcements were not working that morning, or the driver was keeping himself amused by making personal announcements. He groaned and stood up along with about half the commuters on the undertram. The undertram usually ran on time. so he left the station on schedule, which pleased him because he hated being late for anything. He looked around when he walked off the escalator and saw a forest of homogeneous grey office buildings. He thought that whoever named the on-the-tram station Parkland had an ironic sense of humour. He started to compare what he saw now to the tree-lined thoroughfares and manicured lawns of the university, but stopped himself. It was pointless. This grey mess of office blocks was his new home for the foreseeable future, and he just had to accept it. He headed over to the office block where the Sub-Department of Administrative Affairs was located and arrived on schedule at 9 o'clock. The building where the sub-department was located had no signage on it. Jarle surmised that this was in keeping with its low profile. Jarle hadn't known there was such a sub-department with the Ducey Civil Administration until he had received his letter. He entered the building and walked over to the security desk, where he spotted a small sign indicating the tenants of the building. Even to his untrained eye, it was obvious that a substantial amount of money had been spent on the security system, as he observed top-of-the-range equipment everywhere. The security guard looked up. She eyed him up and down suspiciously. "Can I help you?" "I'm sure you can. My name's Professor Jarle. I'm starting a new job with the sub-department today. Here's my work assignment letter." The security guard took his letter and placed it over a scanner. A green light flashed on the computer. She sniffed audibly. "You're on the visitor list. Please place your hand on the scanner." Jarle did as he was